Wake up, Adam, they are getting close.
As China threat grows in Asia, Japan is to open a NATO liaison office to counter Beijing. Now, if you've been following our show for a while, we've talked a lot about, of course, how Japan has changed. And just recently, there was actually the anniversary of Shinzo Abe's perishing. He actually perished at a small speech to people where somebody had some sort of doohickey, is actually what the internet called it, which was a homemade shoddy. And he took the life of that previous president. Within a few weeks of that, all of that president's goals as far as militarizing Japan ended up getting done like that. I mean, it was really, really fast. Now Japan has taken a hard line, and now they're militarizing their country. They have flipped their actual budget for militarizing Japan and being an offensive force. On top of that, they are actually working very closely with the U.S. There's a lot going on here. And I do want people to just keep in mind that whatever the majority of people are thinking, I think that a lot of people think, oh, this White House and all of these people, they're just so stupid, right? But you have to realize there's intelligence agencies that are really behind all of this stuff. And if whatever you are thinking is probably there for you to be made to think that. If you think that our pres is stupid and they're totally incompetent, they probably did something some way around it and made you think that, because there is a greater plan here, and there are huge, huge people at the very top that are essentially pulling strings, and they're pulling strings, and they probably are doing it extremely well to make us think what we are thinking. But right now, it looks like, of course, China and the U.S. are going to go to war. So we'll talk about, of course, this as the threat grows. NATO is growing as well. Of course, it says in an unprecedented move, Japan has taken steps to open a NATO liaison office in Tokyo, solidifying its position with the West against China. Japan's ambassador to the U.S. recently announced plans to open a NATO liaison office in Tokyo, Japan, which has primarily relied on the U.S. for its national security since World War II. Has recently been making moves to bolster its national defense and strengthen security ties within Western nations. It says former Japanese senior vice minister of defense and member of Japan's House of Representatives Kenji Wakamiya told Fox News Digital about the significance behind the strengthening Japan's ties with NATO. Quote, it says the U.S.-Japan alliance has been at the core of Japan's approach to national security. In response to the changing international climate, I believe that it is of great significance to build a multifaceted security network by deepening cooperation with NATO, especially in Europe, while still maintaining the U.S.-Japan alliance at the core of our national security policy. Japan Prime Minister Fumio Kishida also plans to meet with his counterparts from South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand at the NATO summit in Lithuania starting this week. The agenda, of course, includes how to deal with China's growing presence in the East and South China Seas, and China strengthening its partnership in the South Pacific Islands, according to a report by the Yomiuri Shimbun newspaper. As with deepening NATO ties, deepening ties with Australia, New Zealand, South Korea will strengthen the security network in the Indian Ocean, South China Sea, East China Sea, and the Pacific Ocean. Now, we've talked about the AUKUS, the whole deal that they did with Australia, of course, giving them submarines, nuclear submarines, and basically having that agreement, essentially giving them our technology basically for free, and doing all of this because they are going to end up helping in the long run and have them have this huge underwater network of nuclear submarines. So China does not like that. Of course, that all happened with the whole French deal that went south. With this, there is a lot going on, and of course, all of the media is covering 10 other things besides this. So again, we'll talk about this and much, much more. Tonight's show is going to be really, really good. We have a ton of stories to talk about in a short amount of time. So we'll be right back right after this. Stay tuned. It is a live show, and anything can happen. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, we have so much to talk about today. Remember to go over to marfooglenews.com and find every single article, tweet, video, picture, document that we're going to talk about here today over on the website. In fact, you will see that we have a full bibliography of every single article, tweet, video, picture, document right there at your fingertips. So make sure to head over there. And then also at the very bottom of today's page, which you'll just find by looking for today's thumbnail, you will find a full bibliography of all of our extra overflow and web content. This is all stuff that's exclusively on the page, put together every single show, all of the extra stuff. So make sure to go read all of those stories. Very important stuff down there. And then, of course, check out all of our mods. Our mods do a great job in the chat. Make sure to drop an M in the chat for all of our wonderful mods. And, of course, let's say hi to Dex, my co-host/internet brother. Dex James, what is going on and how are you doing today?
Hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I am doing just fine.
So, of course, there's a lot to cover, but let's go back to Japan real quick because this is the NATO liaison office it's kind of odd. I mean, as far as NATO goes, NATO's is a certain type of thing, and Japan has their own kind of partnership with the U.S. Why do you think that they are putting a liaison office in Japan?
Well, I think it's, obviously Japan does have beef with both Russia and China, although NATO's not specifically against China, at least it wasn't created for. But the interesting thing is just the name itself, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, founded in 1949, and it was really against the USSR or Russia, as we think of it, in the threat that was posed by them. So this is now becoming a shift. We're starting to see it go beyond just being how does Europe protect itself or the North Atlantic areas, all the countries that are in the Northern Atlantic areas, Europe, UK to America, Canada, etc. How it's shifting from just them protecting themselves against the threat to now we're moving over to the Pacific. And we don't know that they're necessarily saying that they're going to add countries that aren't in that North Atlantic area. But if they do, and these types of actions we're seeing from Japan is pretty significant. And basically what it's creating is a stronger alliance, is creating more opportunities for Article 5 to be invoked. You could imagine if tomorrow Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and lots of other locations throughout the Pacific region all of a sudden become NATO members, that would be a game changer for anybody that tries to do anything to them. So again, that's if you flip to the other side, like China side or Russia side, you're saying, hey, I don't think you guys need to be doing this anymore. We don't need more of it. We don't want anybody else aligning against us. Et cetera. So that's the threat. And I think that's why it's such a big deal when we see this type of activity with NATO and Japan being involved, that it's eye-opening. And not only that, we've got the big NATO meeting about to start. And I think they're going to be present there as well.
Now, one thing that I have always said, like, I'm super open-minded, and I understand that. I think everybody should understand this, that if you believe something for so long and it is ingrained in you, that it's really hard to go against your own beliefs. If you find out new information or something that basically puts part of your beliefs in question, I think that this is a good thing. I think human beings in general should be this way. I actually just posted too, like, I hate how Twitter essentially, or any platform, you could take this one for example, they basically feed you what they know you will watch and that they know that you'll love. But in that fashion, you know that they're doing that to the other side as well. So somebody is on the left, they are only going to see left content that basically feeds them and feeds their own echo chamber. And if you're on the right, then you only get fed this certain kind of content. Now on Twitter, I really loved it because I love seeing the opposing views of people. And then I love digging into them and essentially trying to debunk them or even debate them, on my own, just saying like, hey, this person's saying that, I want to go in. But I don't see any of it. Even though I've followed, half of the accounts I've followed are on the opposite side of my own, I don't see that stuff. It knows what I like. And its algorithms, of course, look at the stuff that I zoom in on. So it's really annoying to me that they do that, because that means that nobody is going to see eye to eye, because they cannot see the other side of the argument. They cannot see the facts and everything else. My point with this is that it's harder to, it's easier to fool a man than to tell a man he has been fooled, right? It's hard. It's easy to fool somebody, but it's really hard to tell somebody that they have been fooled hardcore. Now, I, of course, like everybody else, look at this, the White House and the U.S. government. I'm thinking, man, we are collapsing, or somebody is infiltrated because we are just so weak, everything else. I still have faith in our military. I still have faith in our of course, the men and the women that are in our military. But there's been decisions that have been made that I'm thinking like, gosh, this is like, they're weakening us on purpose. How they've given a lot of our gear out, how they've essentially done everything except for like leaving $700 million worth of stuff with the Al Qaeda and stuff like that. It's crazy to me. And when I think that, I think, gosh, they are just complete morons, right? But there's got to be something behind this where they are purposely doing everything they're doing. Meanwhile, they have been setting up all of this. Now, when you actually get into the documents about what the U.S. is doing and what the DoD reports say, they are building this huge network around China. So I do see the other side of it. And it took me somebody that was high up in our military to say, you got to look at this, and sent me the DoD stuff and said, they're putting all of this money and effort and resources into all of these different areas, the amphibious assault ships, all of the stuff that's going on with the island hopping, and turning the army into a different kind of force so they can basically pop up on an island, shoot missiles, and then get off that island. We covered that, but of course, they're actually changing the structure of the militaries. And as weak as a lot of people think that they are right now, they are actually honing in, and there's about to be a big, huge butting of heads really soon. That's why I absolutely believe we're going to go to war with China, even if you believe we're encroaching on them or they're encroaching on us. Either way, both of these sides are huge. China is making ships. China is making ships so fast. This is so crazy. What is it? I think it's in a 4-month period. They made every 4 months they're making as many ships as the entire British Navy has. I'll have to I'll have to look up what the stat is, because I think it's every 4 months or every 3 months or something like that. It's something insane though. Whatever it is, even if it was per year, they are essentially making that much ships. They are building their Navy. They are now the largest. They are, of course, ahead in all of these different things. Meanwhile, the U.S. is telling us that we're just completely a bunch of morons. We're running around with chickens cut off the head. I think that it's not that way, but unfortunately, the people that are in charge that are doing things, it's like everybody in our country, the U.S., is now being globalized. It's all being spread out. So the people that are in charge of the U.S., which will probably dominate the entire world no matter what, has people up and above in the richest, most elite people in the world. So there's like a network of people above all of this. But at the same time, there is a lot going on right now. They're sending military all over the world. NATO just added a new country, or is about to. I'm sorry. Turkey just approved Sweden. So there's some big shifts coming. So this is going to be a good show. We're going to talk about all of that. But I do want to point out that there is some information that we didn't get even through mainstream. If you actually go to the DoD report, they're moving stuff all around the world. The entire thing with AUKUS, Japan, I knew Japan. The same person said, watch Japan. This is going to be big. And they were right. Look at what Japan is doing. That was before, that was a couple weeks right before what's-his-face was taken out. So that's pretty crazy that everything is playing out. And if the things to play out are true, then the majority of us are in trouble. But at the same time, we can survive through anything. This is news from a prepper's standpoint. You can prepare for things. And I'm sure most of you guys know, we would rather know if something's coming than to not know and then later go back and find out, get hit in the side of the head. Either way, there are some very evil forces at work here, and it's getting pretty nerve-wracking to say the least. World powers in a rush to get killer robots on the battlefield in an AI arms race as concerns grow that they can turn on humans. So this is a fear and a thing that people kind of laugh at after all the movies like iRobot and Mother and just all sorts of crazy movies. Terminator, of course. People kind of laugh at this, but there are actual agencies that have been actually putting the AI into the robots. And we covered this years ago when South Korea actually had this robotics lab that essentially got a grant, and it was specifically for AI. And they said, oh, we're not making any weapons here. But at the same time, essentially they were getting it from military. So the military is asking them to do something and not make weapons? Come on. None of us really believe that. Well, now, fast forward a couple of years, we're finding out that all of the countries that we're working with are making these AI and autonomous kind of weapons. Not to miss out on, also, we're going to have autonomous jets here. We already have them, but we're going to have fully functioning autonomous, can make its own decisions kind of jets in the next few years. Dex, as far as like military making AI robots, I'm less concerned about them turning on us than how they are going to be utilized in the coming war. What do you think?
I'm worried about both. And to be honest, when we hear, this is the interesting thing, a lot of us just think, oh, AI, ChatGPT, we know what that thing does, or we see cool pictures being made from AI or all these other things, but we don't really understand, what's happening in the world of AI. And when you look at the US government attacking China, specifically around the microchips and doing it to prevent their advancement in AI, it is not because they don't want them to have cool technology and make better products like ChatGPT. It is 1000% about military advantage. There is this right now is probably the single most important thing in our military today, and in the military in China today, and even in Russia or anyone else. If they're investing in building their military, it is with AI. And it's because of the fast advancements that we've gotten in the technology, along with the high performing microchips that have come out over the last many years, which just grow exponentially year over year. Because we have that capability now, it is making significant changes in the way they can build and design equipment. The F-22 can fly by itself. Okay. It can outmaneuver in a dogfight a typical human pilot, and it can actually take over for the pilot if something goes wrong. That's old technology. It's been around for a long, long time. Okay. That is pretty incredible that it can do that. We're talking about the state of the art latest capabilities of artificial intelligence at a scale that is far more advanced than what we've got in, say, an F-22. And an F-22 is the top of the line, 5th generation, that and the F-35. I think they even upgraded the F-35 with some of the F-22 software recently, because it is the best that's out there in production. But what they're building behind the scenes, that's what's scary. And that's what we got to be thinking about. And that's what they're racing towards right now. When they talk about, and I think this was a documentary that this article is written about, but when they talk about this arms race, that's really what they're talking about. And it is significant. And it's something we don't physically see right now, but it's happening at a humongous scale.
And as far as like the AI part of this, China's not going to stop. China's not going to stop because people are saying, "Hey, AI is going too fast." If you can imagine, ChatGPT is what the people have. This is what regular people are able to go access. ChatGPT 4, right? Myself, Dex, or anybody else can go use that. I would think that you were a little bit slow if you think that that's what the government has. Their version is probably way, way more advanced. Now, we've always said that the governments usually have something that's probably 30 years advanced, whatever it may be, but they most guaranteed. And what's even scarier is when you think, yes, so if the U.S. government has probably way scarier AI than what the public has, which is already scary enough, then think of what China could be doing without any kind of no holds barred. So if they're making it, we're not going to stop. And maybe that's what Elon, who has many government contracts and works with the government very closely, is warning about. Like, we are thinking, oh, ChatGPT 4 and how stupid it is. We don't know what the government has. We don't know what the U.S. government has, what the Chinese government, the Russian government has. Think about that. They're thinking about like what those AIs are doing. And those AIs are then also being put into weapons, which you can consider this. China, there was kind of a plan that was put out and they were suggesting it. This was years ago before they had the actual capability, where China would love it if they had an army of robots or even these things like what we had years ago, which is these rovers that have tracks to go in, and thousands of them to go in and actually take a city without a single human being being involved. Now think about if these things were dropped in by air, straight out of a Red Dawn type of thing. Now you could insert China or any other country that they work with. If you could think of something dropping off robots, and then these robots would be programmed, the simplest, I mean, you don't even need super technology. If you have a weapon that can target a face, then you target everybody and you just take out everybody. That would be horrible. Or you could they could actually target military members. It could be trained in that's if it's simple. But now they're making bipedal robots. They're making, of course, these robot dogs that are strapped with 50 cals or 40 cals on their back. It's like this stuff is going to be put into play at some point in the future. And everybody is depending that this whole system that we have right now that we take for super granted is just going to keep going because money is flowing, right? Well, think about this. They might sacrifice a few years during World War III and things will get destroyed. But every country in the world, they can build things like this. They can build huge skyscrapers in a year now. So they're not worried about rebuilding and, oh, well, why would they spend all this money just to destroy it? Because they can and because they will. They will destroy that and then build it back up again because then they will own it. They will have control of it. So even if you think, oh, well, they wouldn't build this whole network out and do all this work, why not? The regular blue-collar workers are the ones who built it, and they don't care about us. That's like saying if something, an asteroid hit the if an asteroid hit the tower, the pyramid, do you think the king back then would have said, "Oh, it ruined all your hard work. Let's just give up"? No, he would send the slaves out there to do it again. He would say, "Okay, well, tear it down and start over." And that's what I think will happen in the future after a world war that destroys real places and not real places, but this whole urban environments that people think that they're gonna not touch because they don't want to rebuild it or something. I get that comment all the time. Why would they help pay to build something if they were just going to destroy it? Because they can. North Korea calls on international community to stop Japan's release of treated Fukushima wastewater. Dex, are they? I guess it caught me off guard.
Yeah, they're jumping on the bandwagon with SK and others that have had concerns. And now look at what it's come down to is Japan has said, look, we have to release this because we got nowhere else to store it. We're running out, and it also gives them the ability to actually get on with decommissioning the plant in completion. But the big thing that nobody really wants to trust is the science behind it. Like, is the water really clean? Because once you dump this into the ocean, you can't take it back. It's done forever. And, even some scientists are saying it could create tritium, which is a radioactive hydrogen isotope that obviously cannot be removed once it's there. And it could gradually build up on marine ecosystems and food chains. So that's like the scariest part of it. But the real question is, we don't know. Like, and this always happens when you have science, when you have theories, when you even have potential proof of something, but you don't know what the long term is. Like, we don't know what the long term effects of dumping this water into the ocean, because we haven't dumped this water in the ocean yet. But Japan is saying we got to do it. But look, lots of countries. China has restrictions against certain foods from certain prefectures of Japan. Obviously, Fukushima being one of them. They do additional inspections on anything coming from Japan because of the whole incident at Fukushima. So there's a lot of concern in the Pacific, and we should think about that too, because that water does circulate all the way back around and come down to us. But it is an issue, and yes, NK is jumping on the bandwagon for what it's worth. I don't know that that's going to change anything, but that's the scary situation. And by the way, Japan said they're going to do this sometime this summer. There's not a date on it just yet.
And we just covered a couple of weeks ago that Japanese people are buying pretty much anything they can that would come out of the water. Seaweed.
SK people.
Oh no, that you're right. South Korea is buying seaweed, buying salt, buying all sorts of things that normally come from the sea because they are essentially paranoid of what may happen after this. So people are actually hoarding this kind of stuff and stocking up on it for years. That is, of course, because they don't want to buy it afterwards because they don't know what it's actually going to do. I think it is kind of crazy that this waste is going to just get dumped, but what else do you do with it? I think it's crazy that they, of course, have, a whole island of trash the size of Texas, all these kind of things. And just now they have a problem with it. You would think that they would have came up with solutions for this kind of stuff years and years and years ago. But yeah. And then North Korea denounces U.S. move to bring ballistic missile submarine to the peninsula. It says out of Seoul, North Korea denounced Monday what it called a move by the United States to introduce a nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines to the waters near the Korean peninsula, which we talked about when they actually made this kind of agreement. They weren't officially giving them one, but they were going to say, well, hey, we'll park it in your waters off of your peninsula, saying it creates a situation that brings nuclear conflict closer to reality. North Korea also claimed that U.S. reconnaissance planes recently violated its airspace near the East Coast, quoting an unnamed spokesperson of its Ministry of National Defense in a statement carried by KCNA. It says that there is no guarantee that a shocking incident where a U.S. Air Force strategic reconnaissance plane is not shot down over the East Sea will not happen. Essentially, basically threatening like, well, there's no guarantee we're not going to take your stuff down. And, they say these things kind of all the time, but they are essentially pissed off about this nuclear submarine. It says a U.S. nuclear-powered cruise missile submarine arrived at the port of Busan in South Korea last month. In April, the leaders of South Korea and the United States agreed that a U.S. Navy nuclear-armed ballistic missile submarine will visit South Korea for the first time since the 1980s, but no timetable has been given for such a visit. So they're moving nukes around. They're moving nuclear submarines. Of course, I mentioned the AUKUS deal earlier. There's going to be a whole network of these things all around. People are, of course, concerned about a nuclear conflict. I think that the only way that would be happen is if there's a huge, huge mistake or, some sort of just horrendous mistake happens. I think that I don't think nukes are as much of a threat as some of the other things. But what is your opinion? Let me know in the comments down below. Which, by the way, thank you, Sean James, for the super chat. Again, says the hashtag Gibson Challenge. Thank you so much. Next Exit. Thank you. Bible Talk 777. Hopkinson, Mystery School, Tennessee Mountain Girl. And then B-Real Beast and Craig Lawnsinger from last show. Thank you. And then, of course, over on D-Live. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. We have all sorts of great people over there right now. Thank you, Yobi. Thank you, Kimbria. Thank you, Ecto1. Thank you, Renegade. PD, and then Cybin, Scooby Doo Do Right, and Beer Juice and Bug Nana and Poca Loco. Thank you guys for supporting over there. Before we move on, I want to remind you there is a huge sale, and it's all on all the remaining X2s that they have, because they have batches of these. Once they get the lithium, they produce the units, and right now they are doing a huge 15% off on all of the Kodi X2s, and again, that stacks on top of our sale. So this is a UPS right off the bat, an uninterrupted power supply. It is a built-in solar generator with the lithium ion phosphate, the new technology that lasts way, way longer. And it, of course, can be dual linked, so you can actually double the capacity and double the output. This is a really, really extremely useful solar generator. And again, you can hook this up to solar panels and get unlimited power. You don't have to have the loud sound that can be heard 3 blocks away. It's absolutely silent, so you can be a gray man. And it doesn't take $5 a gallon gas. This is really great because when you do put the solar panels out, or if you just want to charge it from your wall, you can do that in about 75 minutes, so an hour and 15 minutes, and it will be at 100%, and you can save that power for something else. If you don't want to charge that off your wall, you can actually put out solar panels and just have that charged and ready to go for when you lose power. UPS means that you could have something plugged into this, and then this plugged into the wall. It can draw its normal power, so if the fridge is plugged into this, it's going to be drawing its power from the wall. Right when the power goes out, it's going to switch over to this. That's a UPS system. It immediately, within like less than 10 milliseconds, will switch right over. So it's a great, great system. It is a prepper's dream as far as a portable generator. And also, it does get better. If you do want something a little bit better than that, that is more modular, you can actually go for the Flex Tactical or the Energy Flex 1500. Those are modular. They can be expanded up to 96 batteries. So if you do want to get something that has kind of longevity and you can keep adding to over the years, this is definitely the best of the best. Go to marfugglenews.com/energy, INERGY. I have used all of their products, including the LT, the X2, the Flex 1500, and the Tactical. They are built like tanks, and they work. That's what you want in this. You want reliability, because if SHTF happens, you don't want to be stuck out in the cold or in the dark, really. So go over to marfugglenews.com/energy. Make sure to use the code Marfoogle. Right now, that X2 is 15% off. And then once that batch is gone, that's going to end. So make sure to get over there if they still do have them available. We don't have a current update, but as of yesterday, they did have some left. So go over and check them out, marfugglenews.com/energy. All right, Dex, why don't you go over the President Biden leaves for UK and NATO summit and Finland visits?
Yeah, so the big meeting starts, I think, tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday, and he left Sunday, but he was supposed to meet with the king today, and I think that's probably, obviously that's happened by now, and also meet with the prime minister before heading in. I think the only thing he's really got on the agenda, aside from stopping in UK and meeting with those two people, is to get to the NATO meeting and participate in the large NATO meeting that is happening in Vilnius. So that's the big thing, and we'll be talking quite a bit about that, because that topic is kind of a hot topic right now. All the prep that's going in, a lot of the accusations or potential confirmations they're trying to make and say that's going to happen in this meeting or not. And then, of course, as that meeting unfolds, we'll be covering the updates from it as well. If they tell us, or what they tell us, I should say, because they're only going to tell us what they want us to hear.
Exactly. We're only going to find out afterwards, kind of what is talked about or what they want us to know. But yeah, and then he's doing all sorts of different meetings right now, and we don't know what is actually happening behind the scene. But he's going to end up meeting with King Charles. He's going to meet with all sorts of folks. Let's see here. And then Turkey unblocks Sweden NATO bid, setting stage for summit. So every newspaper, every media outlet saying, like, what's up with the unexpected, reversal of this thing, right? Well, he has asked, he said, well, maybe I would let Sweden in if you let me into the EU. His EU membership has been frozen for years, and I think it was all the way back, to 2012 or something, or 2016, something like that. And they have always done that. So did something happen? We're going to see an article in the future saying, that they've agreed to do something for Turkey. Essentially, he was saying he wouldn't do it. And unless you grease my pockets or do something for us, Turkey agreed Monday to allow Sweden to join NATO, setting the stage for the allies to showcase their unity at a summit focused on supporting UKR against Russia's invasion. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's block on Swedish's membership bid had cast a cloud over the preparations for Tuesday meeting, but the countries ironed out their differences in the 11th hour talks in Vilnius. It says completing Sweden's accession to NATO is a historic step that benefits the security of all NATO allies at this critical time. It makes us stronger and safer, said NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg. Jens Stoltenberg. So this is a giant deal for Russia. They're going to be absolutely livid. They didn't want Finland. They didn't want a single other NATO member. And now they of course, have 2 new members and possibly even more on the way if you consider, and even Japan having a NATO liaison office. Like, everybody's going to be against them, right? Dex, with this is something where Sweden's not directly on the border, right? It's right behind the main border, right? It's right behind Finland's.
I think it's behind Finland, or in between Finland or Finland is in between them and Russia.
But I wonder how this will,
except at the Arctic.
I wonder how this will geographically play into a huge war. If everything pops off, they'll be able to move things through both of those places. It's not like they couldn't before anyways. They were basically practicing with Sweden before this. So there must have been stuff behind closed doors that they already knew about this, or this is all part of the plan, that this is all part of the grandiose plan of what, World War III is going to look like. Russia has now dug over 800 miles. It was like 600 miles, 800 miles of trenches. And then, of course, they have put up defenses all along Russia in all of the bordering countries. They have put up massive dragon's teeth in Poland. Finland has put up, of course, hundreds of miles of fencing and different unit defenses. And then, of course, NATO has put 300,000 additional troops all and around, scattered around their border. So it looks like it's getting, ready to pop off. I really don't understand why people think this isn't going to happen. I think that this is like a train and it just keeps on moving. Dex, go ahead.
Aside from getting access to the Arctic from Sweden, which they also get, I guess, quite a bit with Finland as well. But adding Sweden to the mix then sort of completes the encircling almost of the significant amount of encircling around the Baltic Sea. And the Baltic Sea is the port at which St. Petersburg uses to actually get out. They have to then pass and traverse all of these countries through the Baltic Sea to then get out into the North Sea. That if they can't do that, so I'm just thinking like in a wartime scenario, if all of those NATO countries basically lock down the Baltic Sea, then nothing is going to go in or out of St. Petersburg, and that will leave them to I guess the ports that they have in Crimea, as well as I think there's a port up north. I can't pronounce the name of the city, but I think there's another port up north that goes into what's called the White Sea, which then goes into the Arctic.
So it's going to be extremely important for the Arctic parts of these missions then. And then you have NATO agrees Ukraine will join the without membership action plan. So the WMAP, the WIPIT, I think. NATO allies have reached a decision to cancel the membership action plan, the map for Ukraine's accession to the North Atlantic Alliance. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dmitry Kuleba, wrote on Twitter on July 10th. Following intensive talks, NATO allies have reached a consensus on removing MAP from Ukraine's path to membership. I welcome this long-awaited decision that shortens our path to NATO. It says he further emphasized that there is now the opportune moment to clarify the current status of UKR's invitation to become a member of the Military Political Union. MAP is a program outlining the steps for candidate countries to join the organization At the NATO summit, Bucharest in 2008, it was declared that Ukraine was not would become a member of the alliance without specifying specific terms. Nevertheless, Kiev never received the map, basically the guide to how to join this thing. It says UKR hopes to receive a definitive signal of readiness to join the alliance at the summit in the Lithuanian capital on July 11th to 12th. So how long do you think it's going to be until Ukraine actually joins joins NATO? I think it's going to be this year, is sometime in the next 5 months. But if not, I think it's going to be early 2024. That's from what I think. What do you guys think? We're going to go over to the chat here in a second, if you do want to pop in. And if you do, quick a roll call. Where are you guys from? Let's see here. We got Randy Newman. Hey, what's going on? Magnus Rhythm. We've got Redeemed here. We've got Last Warning, Captain Opana. We have Dragonfire 2023, says 2024. 80s really sucked for music. Truth Iris. Well, you're telling the truth. Maryland representing. Some dude. What's going on? Popped in. We've got Wichita Falls, Texas. Richard Browder. Illinois. What's going on? Darren Schrader. Dan Oberweiser from Montana. And, of course, we have Beer Juice from Uranus. And we've got North Florida from Pamela. Well, I'm glad you're from Pamela. Beautiful Elmwood Place, Ohio. Elmwood Place. I actually think I've been there. Okie Connor drove through. What's going on? Perry Chronicles. Let's see here. Magnus, thank you. Stanton's Shenanigans. Joplin, Missouri in the house. Hey, how are you doing? Howdy to you as well, Magnus. And then we have Kimbria from California. Ozarks of Missouri. Midwestern one. Asha Muhammad from Toronto. Nice to see you. Hi from Fairfield, Ohio. We've always had a lot of Ohio folks. You guys know my family hails from Ohio. Let's see here. Western Kentucky. Hey, Dazed and Confused Blonde. That's awesome. Comet Moon says O-H-I-O. Rotten Apples. Let's see here. Colorado here. Fish, nice to see you. We've got all sorts of great old school Fugel fam, and we, of course, have some new names in here as well. It's nice to see you, Brian Stevens. Some Bat It. Joe from Missouri. Hey, nice to see you. The Rocker and everyone else. And if you're watching the replay, do a roll call. Put a comment down below. Where are you watching from? It's always interesting to see when we have viewers from outside the United States. If you're from one of the places we talk about it in the show, let us know what your opinion is on one of the stories we covered about your where you live. Was I right? Was I wrong? Is there something going on we should know about? Let us know. And then absolutely not. Republicans blast Graham's effort to pass resolution urging Ukraine's admission into NATO. So it seems like Graham and Blumenthal are trying to do a lot. Now, Graham was part of that whole resolution before to have essentially an invocation of Article 5 if anything happened to Zaporizhia, which Zaporizhia still has some weird cloud over it. We don't know, not a physical cloud, but like a cloud of mystery of what's actually happening there. And everybody was expecting on July 5th for something big to happen, or at least then was the deadline for everybody to get out of Zaporizhia. Before that, Graham and Blumenthal essentially came out and said, we have a bipartisan resolution to support essentially a immediate Article 5, World War III, if they do anything to Zaporizhia. Now, some of my peers have said maybe that's why it didn't happen, is because they did all of this and they got the news out and told the world. I don't really think so. I think that it's all part of, kind of the cycle here. But now Graham is involved in another one to basically get Ukraine into NATO. Well, what does Ukraine and NATO mean? Dex, doesn't that pretty much mean World War III?
It certainly does. If they are entered in the middle of a conflict, then yeah, that Article 5 would then generate. And I think that, we've seen a lot of the commentary coming from other NATO members saying, yeah, we'd welcome them in, but it's always, we'd welcome them in once they resolve the issue with Russia. They don't want to let them in right away. Now, this notion of removing the map, that's an interesting thing that gives them, I guess, a little bit of advantage and to not have to do the extra work involved in that, the documentation and all the stuff that gets involved with it. But getting back to Graham, Graham, I guess he was just thought he was on a roll with his last resolution that he got bipartisan support for, regarding that that now he's taking it to this next step, and people are like, wait a minute, this is getting a little out of hand. So I'm not a big Graham fan, and we don't normally get into politics, but it's important because it is related to the big meetings that are happening starting tomorrow and the next day in Villanova. So
Yeah, and so you can see what's happening here. Everything that UKR has asked for, they have gotten at some point. It's just a time delay. It's like they go through this rigmarole and they go through this whole, circus that they do, and then it happens. I can almost guarantee that they're going to end up letting NATO in, and that is the ultimate red line. That's when we'll see that if Russia really meant it was a red line, then we will see. The crazy part is when you think about all of this, the things that they can do as far as cyber attacks and things like this is what preppers worry about, because it may not be a war like we think it's going to look like. The U.S. is extremely vulnerable to a cyber attack or to a power or grid down scenario, and that would be something where it wouldn't directly take lives. No one would perish if they knocked our grid down, but why 90% of people would die is from a lack of infrastructure. Really, all of the things that keep us going. That's why, of course, the NERC report says, essentially 9 locations get knocked down, the entire grid goes down, and it would take anywhere from 12 to 24 months to fix. Most say 12 to 18 months. In that first year, they say 90% of people in the U.S. would perish. And that's because we don't know how to live without all of our wonderful infrastructure. Now, I know some of you do, but imagine all of the people around you, especially the ones that can, barely deal without their phones for 5 minutes. I can't imagine what they would do without electricity. So as far as UKR joining NATO, this is what preppers are prepping for. If your belief is they are going to let them in and it's just a matter of time, then that means it's just a matter of time before a really big war starts. And if a really big war starts, it's not only going to affect the world and the places that are involved in this crazy war, but it would also affect the economy. Even this being said and done is probably already affecting the stocks and stock market and everything else. But again, this is nothing compared to what it could be. If they really do get painted in a corner, or even before this, they could do some sort of massive cyber attack as their first strike. So this is why people really need to, get their stuff together. And let's see here. And then Biden lets American military info slip during live interview. Before we talk about that, if you do want to protect yourself, make sure to go check out EMP Shield. You can actually get the same protection that agencies like DOD and DHS are getting. And officially, the EMP Shield is actually now on the Dempster team helping protect the Texas grid. This is a device that can be wired into your cars, trucks, and pretty much anything else, including Energy Flex 1500. And it can protect against not only solar events, CMEs, or a coronal mass ejection, a Carrington level event, but it can also protect you against an EMP strike. It can protect your cars and all of your different devices, including solar and even ham radios. If you want to protect any of the pictured above or even many more, go to marfooglenews.com/EMP. They have 10% off on top of our $50 off per device for their 4th of July sale. So make sure to go check it out. That is still on. Make sure to use the code MARF because you're going to get $50 off per device and you're going to get the 10% that they already have off right now. It stacks. marfooglenews.com/EMP. All right. And then, so letting the military info slip. President Biden sat down for a recent interview in which he said that the United States is low on 155 millimeter artillery ammunition rounds, sparking outrage and questions of competencies from conservatives on social media. During the interview, which aired on Sunday morning, President JB defended his administration for sending cluster munitions to Ukraine as a transition period until more munitions are produced. It says this is a war relating to munitions, and they're running out of that ammunition. And we're low on it, JB told CNN's Fareed Zakaria, and it says, and so I did, so what I finally did, I took the recommendation of the Defense Department to not permanently, but to allow this transition period while we get more 155 weapons, these shells for the Ukrainians. It says that reactions on social media range from confused to outrageous. Conservative pundits and experts alike wondered why JB was announcing the U.S. shortage during a nationally televised interview that would be seen by adversaries. So what do you think? Do you think this is on purpose? That's the thing. I almost think that part of this is all done on purpose. He has so many gaffes, it's like they're doing it on purpose. And I know many of you are going to go, no, he's just demented or dementia or something. But it's to the point now where it almost seems like we're getting duped. And again, it's hard. It's easier to fool a man than to convince them that they've been fooled. Dex, we probably don't even see eye to eye on this one, but don't you think it's like there's constantly something that makes us feel like we have a bunch of idiots on top of us? I guess I give more credit to all of the three-letter agencies that are working in the background. I wonder why would they actually let all of this stuff happen, right?
I at this point, we don't know when he's talking if it's, if he's actually speaking the truth or speaking, gibberish and out of context, or even mixing context, which he's done before, using different country names when he really means UKR. He said Iraq, right? So, it's like you don't understand sometimes if what he's saying is true. Now, this kind of statement is pretty bold, and it's not something a president would normally let out in the public. You would never say that we're running low on munitions. And then technically, when you look at what he's saying, you could infer that that's what he meant, but you can also infer that maybe he's just sloppily speaking like he does, and it's coming across wrong, and he's meaning that they're low. But nonetheless, if they're low and we have to produce it, that means we don't have it sitting around to give to them. So you could easily infer, which is what I was saying, and I think a lot of people are inferring, that his statement is basically telling the world, hey, we're low. And by the way, I would think we're low on more than just this one thing. We're probably low on everything we've been giving up and sending over. I don't know. I don't have my eyeballs on the stocks and what we've got stored away. Who knows? Maybe we've got, tons of it stashed, but it just seems to be like we're putting out that message that makes it look like, and I know we've talked about it, and other people have talked about the fact that our resources are thinned out because we send so much over to UKR.
It's also always to CNN. Have you guys noticed that it's always a CNN interview, a CNN article that comes out with these things, and some people question like, oh, well, don't they cover up for them? Yeah, they did when it was, there's a plan here. I guess if you step outside of it and try to just put everything aside, it's like there's always some sort of gaffe going on, some sort of mistake. If the United States looks bad right now, I think it's on purpose. I think it is on purpose. And that was hard for me to even really to gather. The thing is they have people at the very highest levels. They're playing with people. They're manipulating how we feel, how we think, how we talk. It's like the movie They Live. It's like I think it's so much bigger than anybody can even realize, and it's happening everywhere. Something massive is going on, and it very well could be the opposite of what we all think it is. I don't know. Again, we'll talk about it in a little bit. We're going to talk about some pole shift subjects. I'm going to, of course, go to the audience and ask you what you're thinking. A lot of people are bringing up pole shift recently. There's been a lot of chatter and talk about pole shift. There are two different kinds of pole shifts: Adam and Eve, kind of the whole world shifts 90 degrees, and then geomagnetic pole reversal. So we'll talk about that here in a second. But Russian mercenary leader Prigozhin's commanders met Putin after short-lived mutiny and pledged loyalty. Just 5 days after staging a short-lived rebellion, mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin's commanders met with Russian President Vladimir Putin and pledged loyalty to the government. A senior government spokesman said on Monday, the latest twist in a baffling episode that has raised questions about the power and influence both men wield. Well, if there's any question on both of them, then it's on purpose. There's huge propaganda going on right now. That whole thing was a circus and a show, in my opinion. What is yours? Let me know in the chat below. Thank you, Nana of Montana. Thank you for the $50 super chat. We appreciate you, and thank you for supporting Independent. Can't thank everybody that supports us enough. Nana, thank you, and thank you. The 3-hour meeting took place June 29th and involved not only Prigozhin, but commanders from his Wagner Group military contractor. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Putin gave an assessment of Wagner's action on the battlefield of UKR. Yeah, I would think that the assessment would kind of include, I don't know, a mutiny and kind of trash all of his previous things. Unless, I don't know, they're mercenary groups, so they're literally paid on what to do. So kind of guess that maybe they paid them to do this whole rebellion thing, or at least to pretend like it was happening. Dex, do you have an opinion about the Wagner meeting?
No, I mean, I have plenty of thoughts, but it's like, who knows what's going on with this nonsense? It's been such a clown show, so to speak, when you think about like what actually transpired in the media, in the information that was put out, and then in what's been said by the officials from the governments. Yeah, it's baffling. I don't even know where to go with it at this point. But this sort of helps them support the narrative. So if, this is coming out from the Kremlin, so let's put that lens. We know it's coming from them. They're putting it out, and they're putting it out on purpose. So if they're doing that, it probably helps support that narrative that Prigozhin said, hey, we weren't really coming to take over the government. We were just trying to take out Shogu, who was, responsible for striking my team. And we weren't really doing a coup. We were marching for, as a protest. And I think that was sort of the statement he was trying to make to after the fact, to say, well, it really wasn't as bad as you guys think it was. It was more like a protest.
Oh yeah,
and
protest
so
where they take out a chopper.
Yeah, exactly. Like 4 or 5 choppers they took down, some high-end stuff they took down from the ground, like no problem. But this type of narrative coming from the Kremlin then sort of helps support that, because it says that the commanders themselves present, and this is a quote, presented their version of what happened. They underscored that they are staunch supporters and soldiers of the head of state, meaning they're staunch supporters of Putin. And they, said they were ready to continue to fight for the homeland. So all of that was what, that's the narrative they're pushing out to us. So I think it probably helps support at least that notion. And if that helps Putin save face, if this was actually something different, then maybe that's what this is.
And then, of course, we have the U.S. drones of Syria for second day. Air Force response ceased this reckless behavior. Russian fighter jets harassed United States Air Force drones over Syria for a second time in 24 hours. U.S. Forces Central said on Thursday. New video released on Thursday showed the Russian aircraft flying dangerously close and deploying flares near several U.S. drones. It was released the day after the U.S. military released similar footage on Wednesday. Russian military aircraft engaged in unsafe and unprofessional behavior Thursday, 9:30 a.m. local time, while interacting with a U.S. MQ-9 drones carrying out our de-ISIS mission in Syria. So, it's always with the drones. The scary part is if it ever, becomes a manned jet. That's where things can get really spicy. Dex, go ahead.
Well, and this time, you guys probably all remember the drone that went down. That time they were doing the same thing. They were releasing flares, but they were also flying awfully close. And that's probably what really the issue was. But in this time, they're dropping parachute flares, so it's totally different. They're like they're launching them out in front and letting them drift down into the path of the drone, which is kind of dangerous as well. So, and by the way, we also reported that one of the big shifts we did with CENTCOM was they brought in F-22s, and they deployed F-22s in that area specifically because of the actions that Russia was taking against our drones. So they wanted to have the higher end aircraft there if they needed it to support some sort of escalation, which this is the kind of stuff we talk about. Like, these little incidents can easily escalate into something much bigger.
And this is just a weird one. A mysterious Russian spy agency known to only a handful of experts and likely responsible for detaining at least 3 Americans leaves bizarre calling cards to taunt American targets, the Wall Street Journal reported. This is from the Wall Street Journal. It says the Russian Department for Counterintelligence Operations, or DECRO, a secretive organization that operates under the FSB, Russia's security agency. It says the American intelligence community has watched the DKRO with growing concern in recent years and now believes that they were responsible for the arrest of journalist Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street reported. It says those familiar with the group's activity told the Journal that DKRO agents often taunt their targets by leaving various clues that they are watching. This is creepy. It says a burned cigarette on a toilet, for instance. So you guys understand, this is straight up out of Scarface. You know that, right? Where they didn't they do this in Scarface? Or no, it was The Godfather. I'm pretty sure it was The Godfather, where the agents were like smoking cigarettes or something, and they dropped them in the driveway so they would see them or something. Am I wrong? Can you guys correct me in the chat? It says that, or unflushed feces in the toilet. So they used their toilet, left the thing. So imagine you, again, you're in a hotel room or you live in your house or something, and you live there alone. You come in and somebody's used your bathroom. That is absolutely terrifying. And it's gross, but it's terrifying. I mean, I mean, people feel violated enough if somebody robs you, but what if they don't? What if they literally just come inside your house and do something like this? I don't think I've heard, I'm telling you, that's from Godfather. It's like they got some inspiration.
And it gets worse.
Oh yeah, it does. It gets real worse. And they also left poop, in a diplomat's suitcase, the Journal reported. Experts say the group may be connected to a series of strange incidents in recent years, such as inexplicable flat tires on embassy cars and the suspicious death of a diplomat's dog. That's really messed up. So they went after the guy's dog. It says they're very, very smart on the America target. They've been doing this a long time. They know us extremely well. Dan Hoffman, a former Central Intelligence Agency station chief in Moscow, told the Journal, they do their job extremely well. They're ruthless about doing their job, and they're not constrained by any resources. What's so crazy to a normal person is like that this all goes on at the top tiers of society. These very important rich people, politicians and stuff. It's just crazy that there's all this espionage going on all over the place. And it's worse than the movies. It's crazier than the movies because it's actually happening. You know, there's people actually getting their head covered and pulled into a van, or getting thrown off of roofs, or, you know, having somebody go in their house, leave a burnt cigarette on their toilet seat, or even worse, something in it, or even taking this is kind of like the horse head on the bed type of thing. Very, very freaky. And Chuck Norris says, my ex-wife must be a trained agent then. She's done all that. Oh, that's pretty good. Well, I'm glad we can all laugh about it. This is, again, it talks about then the reporter is facing charges of espionage charges in Russia since the Cold War, according to the Journal. He's now been imprisoned for over 100 days. Gershkovich's arrest marks the first time an American reporter has faced espionage charges in Russia since the Cold War. So there's definitely a lot more going on now than there has been in the past. And let's see here. And then Medvedev threatens to strike 3 Iranian nuclear power plants and nuclear facilities in Europe. Before we go to that, make sure go over and check out marfugglenews.com/prep. You can get long-term survival food, and there's $80 off on a 1-month supply. which is huge. If you do want to get a 3-month supply like the old deal, which was $200 off a 3-month supply, if you get 3 1-month supplies, you'll get $240 off. So this is a really great deal. I would definitely utilize it. $240 off if you do end up getting 3 months. That's a giant deal. Not to mention this is freeze dried, so this will last 25 plus years, sealed in Mylar bags and then sealed in buckets. So then you can put it wherever you need it. Go take it to the bug out, take it to where you want to make a bug out, or keep it in your basement or in your car or truck, whatever. marfugglenews.com/prep. Again, that's marfugglenews.com/prep. And then I cover it because people want it to be covered, but Medvedev is always threatening something. Let's do a quick poll. How many of you take, or I'm trying to do this in a way that it's not like directing people to think one way or the other. Unfortunately, if I say my opinion, people follow it. What do you guys think of? Press 1 for if you are concerned ever about Medvedev. See, I said it. Or 2 if you are not concerned about Medvedev and his comments. Or 3 if you want to hear them, but not necessarily afraid by any of them. He's the former prime minister, the former leader of Russia, and he basically has said almost every week that he wants to nuke us, or they will nuke us, or they'll wipe us off the planet. So, again, that's a lot of 2s. Section 47 says, who cares? Desensitize, see, heart, think. It's just true. I mean, Medvedev says something every week. It's 3, want to know, but not really concerned. And 2, don't. Again, lots of 2s. He talks too much, says Papa mid-fight FB. I mean, I look at this stuff too, and it's just like, my personal opinion is like, it's just it's filler. It's filler news. Like, I bet he just sits around all day saying things, and mainstream will literally take that and turn it into an article. That's why I'm just like, I'm kind of burnt out on the whole, what do you call it? Medvedev thing. I bet you guys are too. And then, again, but the specifics of it is Medvedev is threatening to strike 3 UKR nuclear power plants and nuclear facilities in Europe. So remember, they are basically setting it up for if something happens to one of these places, that, instant invocation of course, Article 5. Doesn't it seem like this is a play, like they're playing the parts? Again, Dmitry Medvedev has threatened to strike 3 UKR nuclear power plants and nuclear facilities in Eastern Europe. If, it's always an if. If they do this, then we'll do that. If an alleged attempt by the UKR Armed Forces or the UAF to attack the Smolensk NPP in Russia with NATO missiles is confirmed. So he does have a lot of pull. He is the former leader. It says, if the attempt to attack the Smolensk NPP nuclear power plant in Donetsk, Russia, with NATO missiles is confirmed, we should consider the scenario of a simultaneous Russian strike on Pavel-Denorensk, Rivne, and Kemolensky NPPs as well on nuclear facilities in Eastern Europe. There is no reason to hold back. See why that would matter, though? And then there's an enormous gravity hole in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Scientists say that they've finally worked out what's causing it. This is a trip. It says there's a huge gravity hole in the middle of the Indian Ocean that has stumped scientists for decades. The million square mile anomaly isn't a physical hole, but an area of the ocean where Earth's gravity is lower than the average. Scientists studying the hole have long thought that there must be something underneath it that's causing the strange effect. But a new study suggests that researchers should have been looking around, not under the gravity hole, to solve the mystery of how it formed. They claim that plumes of molten rock rising from the remnants of an ancient ocean bed could be to blame. It says that gravity varies very slightly over the surface of the globe, but most of these variations can be easily explained. A dense continent, for instance, may have more mass and therefore slightly higher gravity than, say, a zone where the crust is thinner. It says, but scientists have struggled to explain the gravity hole in the Indian Ocean, known as the Indian Ocean Geode Low. The difference in gravity is not huge. You certainly wouldn't be able to notice it if you were standing right in the middle of the anomaly, Bernhard Steinberger said. But it is significant enough that the ocean levels over the 1.1 million square mile patch are about 300 feet lower than in the surrounding oceans. It says, I think what people generally assume is that there must be some low density underneath that's causing that. So it says, but in that paper, they actually have a different theory, he said. It says, to understand what's causing the whole, geophysicist Atri Ghosh, a doctoral student at Devan Pal, the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, asked a computer simulate what may have happened. They plotted 19 different scenarios looking at how tectonic plates may have moved around the hole over the past 140 million years. Their study, published in Geophysical Research Letters in May, found that only a few scenarios could account for the gravity hole, and that in none of these models were the low gravity caused by what is directly underneath it. It says instead they found that the hole was likely caused by plumes of low density magma. It says it's something that you could have thought of before, you just wouldn't think of it because you tend to think that there must be something underneath, said Steinberger, who was not involved in the study. You have like a negative cutout. And it goes back a long time. It says the most likely explanation for the gravity hole goes back to the separation of Gondwana, the supercontinent at the origin of Africa, Australia, and India, about 120 million years ago. As India separated from Africa and went to smash into the European plate, the ocean that used to be there, called the Tethys, was split apart and squished between the continental plates. It says some tiny parts of the plate are still present in the Mediterranean, but most of that plate is still slowly melting back into the deep, Earth's interior around eastern Africa. As the dense mantle melts away, it creates a plume of low-density magma, contributing to the low-gravity area. So now I have talked to others. Now, this is where we'll kind of dip into this whole Adam and Eve thing. There are so many different theories that people are then tying back to kind of the Adam and Eve theory of possible cataclysms that go back in time many times, that it's basically cyclical, that there are these cataclysms that basically wipes the planet clean, and then it all kind of starts over again. Now, how many of you, press 1 if you know about Thomas Chan and the Adam and Eve story. Press 1 if you do, 2 if you don't, and 3 if you heard about it but have never actually looked into it. There's a lot of freaky stuff there, and the deeper you go, the crazier it gets, because there's scientific theories that actually go alongside it. So 1 for yes, 2 for no, and it looks like there's a lot of ones. If you want to put an interesting point about what you have found, let me know, because I'm still learning about all of the different theories that surround this thing, and it's absolutely nuts, because the Adam and Eve story was actually classified by the CIA, and people questioned when it was unclassified, why was it ever classified in the first place? Well, it talks about cataclysms and a major pole shift, but a physical pole shift. So the planet actually shifting, and I think it's 90 degrees, and essentially when it shifts, everything else keeps going. If we are spinning at whatever miles per hour, if the Earth actually shifts 90 degrees or does a huge massive shift, not the geomagnetic poles, but the actual planet, then everything on the surface would essentially move at the same speed. It's kind of like if you spin an egg and then stop it, the inside is still going, but the outside is not. It will actually bring it with. But if you actually put dust on the outside of the egg, if you spin it and then stop it, the dust would actually shoot off in every direction. They say it's possibly responsible for cataclysms that have happened back as far as we can even see. That almost every religion, every country in the world has had some sort of cataclysm in their myths and legends and holy books and religions, and that a lot of them are somehow tied. That the Great Flood, that all of these other religions in different parts of the world had a great flood as well, that they've all been somewhat connected. This has been talked about by some of the biggest, names and biggest scientists, and of course, Michio Kaku has talked about it. Joe Rogan and things have happened to highlight this stuff, and there's been some great pieces. But overall, people either kind of try to debunk it, or they say that this is absolute. As far as pole shift goes, everybody right now has been talking about the geomagnetic poles. Recently in our community, I believe there's a couple channels that are talked about a lot, like Maverick Star Reloaded is one of them, where they talked about a theoretical kind of point where the magnetic poles go past a 40-degree mark, that something will start happening. A geomagnetic pole reversal, they say, can happen over 2 to 7,000 years or 2 to 10,000 years, and that once it starts, it takes that 10,000 years. Some say that it could actually, that the geomagnetic poles, those could flip really fast, that they can't absolutely prove if it happens overnight or if it happens over that 10,000 years. Either way, when those happens, they do know that it moves over many years, but then the last very part of it could be one day, right? That would cause a problem, like where if we don't have anything protecting us, that geomagnetic field protects us from the sun's rays and all sorts of stuff, that could be a cataclysm in its own. But how many of you have looked into the actual planet shifting 90 degrees? Now, if it first seems really, really silly, but when you look at what the governments of the world are doing, planning to get off the planet and all of these other things, it's kind of creepy. And Elon Musk has even made some recent comments that have creeped people out, essentially about the planet being wiped clean and that this will happen again at some point. Dex, go ahead.
Yeah, the question I have, and I'm not looking for you to answer it, it's just putting it out there, is the Chan Thomas theory and the Adam and Eve theory, is it magnetic reversal or magnetic shifting, or is it physical pole shifting? And the only reason I ask that question is when you look at all the people that are writing about it, they just treat the whole term pole shifting, and a lot of times they even say magnetic pole when they're talking about that. And is that because they're truly talking about magnetic, or are they talking about the physical? And just to keep in mind, there's a physical pole, which is the Earth spinning around on these points, the north and the south. And then there's this magnetic pole, which we've shown, that tracking pole that has moved around over time, and it's probably in Siberia right now. That is the magnetic pole. That's where the compass points. That's caused by the shift, the spinning of iron in our crust. Or below our crust, that's spinning around, creating that magnetosphere around the Earth, which protects us from the solar radiation. That pole moves, and that pole moves all the time. And they claim that they've seen it, they know that it's flipped numerous times in the past, and they've seen it. But my point is, there's two different types. There's the physical, which is the axis that the Earth is spinning on, and then there's the magnetic, which is created by that molten iron that's shuffling around underneath Earth. And which one is this theory pointed at? And I only ask the question because everywhere I read, they interchange it like it doesn't matter. Like some people will say the magnetic pole, and they'll talk about the Adam and Eve theory. And then some people will just say pole shifting, and they won't designate the difference.
So a lot of people are saying both. And I believe it's that the planet shifts, then the magnetic poles have to shift with it. But just a magnetic pole reversal, they don't know what will happen either. And I think what's crazy is in our community, there's a debate. Panther says it's not a theory, by the way. A lot of folks do not think this is theory, that it is literally what is going on. Some said it was the, a micronova that causes it, not pole shift, right? There's a Let's see here. Crustal displacement, not pole shift, says 20 Prosperity 12. Magnetic versus spin. Yeah, two different things. But everybody intertwines those two, right? My way of looking at it, if the planet turns, then either the magnetic poles then dissolve, which is not the same as just a pole reversal where the poles flip in place, because they say that happens every 300,000 years to 780,000 years, and it takes 10,000 years possibly to actually happen. But if the Earth is spun like this, just whoosh, then there's no way that the magnetic poles would be tied to that same thing and either dissolve and then rebuild itself, which is what some people say, or it moves with it. Knot theory, our inner core shifts poles and slows. This causes the out core to melt. This causes a shift in the crust, says CMAC. So, and again, I think Dex, you said, so if the inner core and the inner cores of our planets, supposedly, they are what creates the magnetic poles, correct?
The iron, yes.
So if something happens inside, wouldn't that not affect the outside and the magnetic poles?
Yeah, it would, but it depends on what that effect is. If that effect stops, then there would probably be no magnetic pole until it came back.
So why do folks believe that this is something that we need to be worried about during our time? Let's see here. Wait, hold on. I'm on Google. I should be on DuckDuck. This is the more and more you look into it, the crazier, deeper it goes, right? We're going to be doing a full show on this. So I want to get your input on this because I want to add to it. I want to really get everybody's different views on this. And Eve.
And while you're pulling that up, Adam, one of the other things that draws my attention to this that we should be thinking about is what MSM says. And it's very interesting because there's been a lot of talk about the Adam and Eve topic. And we've seen recently a lot of MSM articles coming out and saying, oh, don't worry about magnetic, quote unquote, shifting. There's no reason to believe that has any effect on the change, the thing about climate they like to talk about. They say it has nothing to do with that. And they've plastered that everywhere now. Popular Science, all the major mainstream / geeky type areas are saying that. And they're saying it in response to the fact that a lot of people are talking about this. So I always question when MSM gets involved and tries to tell us how we're supposed to think, you might want to throw a big grain of salt on top of them.
Well, and here's the thing, Dex. Everyone in the last month, and it's because some are saying it's because of TikTok. TikTok is actually because they're using clips from YouTube. It's saying that essentially that these are debunked. But when you see that, if somebody sees this from all over the place, they see it in 8 different places, they say, oh, well, that's debunked. The parts that are being debunked is the extra claims that are going on to TikTok, right? So what they're saying, and who knows, maybe that could be right. Maybe they're debunking and covering it, whatever it may be. But like this one says, TikTok slammed by users over rapid spread of demonstrably false Adam and Eve theory. How do you get it so wrong? And they're talking about the way that it affects the weather, right? That all of this is caused by that, right? I don't know if that's the case, whatever it may be. But they're adding things on to this and connecting other things. And some are theories that people are just coming up with. Then they say it's wrong. Why did every mainstream media come out and saying, oh, this is totally bunk? Well, one thing is there are scientific parts of the whole Adam and Eve thing that were actually using real theories from real scientists. In fact, scientists that basically preceded Thomas Chan or Chan Thomas, whatever. And those are from folks, and some of the theories were even people that worked with Albert Einstein and other things. And there's something to be said here. There's a lot of events happening in our world right now that really make you scratch your head, and it makes you wonder, is there something to this, and not to just go by exactly what it says in there, but to actually look at it. So I'd love to get your opinions on this. Everybody thinks something different in this realm. Let's see here. It's a unit constant contact with the rest of the world population. Even Albert Einstein subscribed to the theory of catastrophism, 12,000-year event of crustal displacement. When sun turns red, run. See here, micronova is coming, late 30s, early 40s during solar minimum. Happens every 12,000 years. We are overdue by 600 years, I think, says Bobby Sue. Thomas Chan is the author, yes. Science is a religion now, because is happening whether we have missions or not, because 20 years of building is still in the atmosphere, another 20 to 30 years. Hey, Rip Curl is here. Rip Curl Readiness. Nice to see you here. Va Vang. Einstein was a hack, says some dude. If reality follows movies, thoughts of the day after tomorrow in 2012 are playing in my head. Says Dorothy Tucker. Well, when you look at this, they talk about some very extremely scary stuff, like it totally rotating. Well, why? The one thing that they really mention a lot is that the fact that the richest, most elite people in the world a lot of them are kind of end of the worlders. Elon Musk. You have, of course, Jeff Bezos has made some very odd comments. You have, of course, Virgin Mobile. What's his face that did the Atlantic or whatever that the third one. I always forget that one. But Blue Origins and, of course, SpaceX. They're trying to get people to Mars, get people to the moon. They're sending all of these samples away. They're digging tunnels under the ground. Could some of this be where if we do have a magnetic pole reversal that temporarily we're not protected from the sun? Maybe that's why the Boring Company was born, is they're going to be digging these underground huge tunnels. What I also think is weird is you could totally speculate and put things together, but there are a lot of things that kind of would fit together if there was some sort of theory here, because all of these places around the country have heard these mysterious booms. Their whole house is shaken. There's no earthquake, but yet something is going on in all of these towns across America where there's these giant booms, and it's not from the sky. It's actually from the ground. It could be the earth displacing and things rumbling underneath, but I wonder if it's something like a Boring Company contract where they're actually digging humongous tunnels underneath the planet, and they're building, domes or something. It makes me wonder, like they're and by the way, some people go, oh, that's totally quack, this and that. And people have absorbed think about this. Everything you look up is basically saying debunk, debunk, debunk. Well, why in the world did they classify this? This guy was a CIA agent. Why was it classified in the very first place? They say, oh, it was because of parts of it, because he was an agent during this time and he couldn't. There's so much confusing parts about this. And it's I would love for you to give me your feedback, and especially down in the comments below. This, of course, is a hot topic now, especially after certain folks went on Joe Rogan. 100 million people see it, then they talk about it. And then, of course, it becomes a big thing on TikTok. What do you think the real truth is behind it? And what are your theories on if the world is ending and when it could possibly be ending? This is something that, of course, if we get a general consensus of, we can figure out what is mostly thought. Do most people think that this is complete BS? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your theory. And then scientists discover mysterious radioactive rock on the far side of the moon. Dex, go ahead.
I wanted to comment real quick on the magnetic side. Like, the one thing that we've heard from the scientific community and a lot of people is that when it does flip, the act of flipping, there is no magnetic coverage. In other words, while it goes from north to south, even if it happens quickly and if it's over a month, a week, or years or whatever, if it's measurable and understandable by us humans, if that happens during that time period, we're not protected from radiation, or we don't have nearly as much protection from radiation from the sun. That's the one thing that we do know, or at least we think there's some sort of consensus about, that is awfully scary when you think about it.
Yeah, and you think about the Great Flood and Noah's Ark, and there's been many other religions that have. So when we do the show on this, or we might even do an edited video, is put together all of the different religions, and if you guys can help in this, this is how you guys can help. Comment. Comment the information you guys know. Let's compile this. And if we end up using something that we got from your research or your theories, I will credit you in the video. I want to put together really a comprehensive look at it and either debunk it or show you what the parts are that are real, and be able to provide somebody who doesn't know anything about it and be able to provide something that they can go, okay, well, this is the part that was based on truth. This is the part that was based on theory, speculation, and then try to pull into some of the other things that are going on, because there's a lot of weird events going on right now. But of course, there's all sorts of different coverage on it. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. And then scientists discover a mysterious radioactive rock on the far side of the moon. A radioactive rock. And it says that they have discovered a large radioactive granite formation underneath the surface of the far side of the moon. According to a new paper, this unexpected rock formation might offer researchers some clues about our moon's long history. In the paper, which is published this week in the Journal of Nature, the researchers posit the existence of a subsurface granite suggests that the less studied far side of the moon, which always faces away from Earth, once housed one or several volcanoes, which erupted around 3.5 billion years ago, early in the moon's history. Well, just imagine that for a second. If we were looking up at the moon and a volcano, went boom, boom. And by ton of the theories, they say that the moon that the Earth was actually hit by a huge meteor, and the moon broke off from the Earth. So it's kind of a trip to even think about what if that was just evidence of when it was a part of Earth, and that was what it is. I know that there's some people that believe it's a satellite, that it's cheese, whatever you think, let me know in the comments below. Any big body of granite that we find on Earth used to feed a big bunch of volcanoes, said study co-author Matthew Seigler. And it says that subsurface igneous rock deposits left behind by cooling volcanoes called batholiths are much bigger than the volcanoes they feed on the surface, added Seigler. It says, for example, the Sierra Nevada mountains are a batholith left from a volcanic chain of the western United States that existed long ago. To determine the chemical makeup of the radioactive lunar deposit, the researchers used microwave frequencies to measure the compound's geothermal activity. They were able to deduce from the data that the deposit contains certain radioactive elements that can only be attributed to granite. So this would mean that they would have had some sort of volcanoes on the moon. Still, the results are a bit of a surprise, though the region of the moon where the mystery rock was discovered, often referred to as the Compton-Belkovich anomaly, contains a known volcanic complex. Granite has rarely been found on the moon. The newly discovered hunk of granite, however, is pretty huge and measures over 30 miles in diameter. The surprising magnitude of the geographic extent of this feature imply an Earth-like evolved granitic system larger than believed possible on the moon. So it says if you don't have water, it takes extreme situations to make granite. So here's this system with no water and no plate tectonics, but you have granite. So something's up there. Plus, it's weird that China actually did this whole excursion and they went to the far backside of the moon, supposedly. And there's all these questions like, what is up there on the moon? What is behind it? It's such a trip that our regular accepted fact of life is that we have this moon, which is literally the exact same size as the sun because it's an exact distance from the Earth. Even though the sun is millions and millions of times farther, they end up being exactly the same. There are things that even if you absolutely believe in science, all this stuff, there are things that make your mind boggled, right? The sun is thousands of times bigger than the moon, millions of times. I don't know how much bigger, but yet because of its distance, it's exactly far enough to where they are both the same side. It makes you question. It's just so flippin' weird. And the moon is supposedly right there, but yet we stopped going to it after we went a few times, but yet there's all these weird things going on up there. There's just so many odd things about even just planet Earth. Flowers, the symmetrical kind of value of things, how certain things have certain numbers of things. It just makes you wonder about everything. What do you guys think? Let me know. What do you think about volcanoes on the moon? They've already come out in just the last couple of years and told us that they have oxygen on the moon, that they have that the moon is inside the Earth's atmosphere, or at least part of the Earth's atmosphere, and that our atmosphere, a technical part of our geocorona, I believe they call it, or something, I forget the actual term outside of that, goes 200,000 miles past the moon. Something doesn't sit right. And then Twitter traffic is tanking. By the way, Ron Duke, thank you. Thank you. Stiletto Czar says Celeste Solom explains it in a worked for FEMA. I will have to check that out. Celeste Solom. And then Apocalyptic, thank you for subscribing. The Lady Cara, thank you for subscribing. Ricky, thank you for subscribing. Daryl Davis, about an hour ago, thank you for subscribing. And as always, if you do subscribe, you will get a shout out. Stiletto Czar, nice to see you again. Thank you for the recommendation. Twitter traffic is tanking as Meta Threads hits 100 million users. We'll talk about that in just a second. Make sure to go over and check out Off Grid. Great, as far as can protect your phones, your cell phones. They have all sorts of different products. You can actually go check out the bags that can protect Faraday-wise. There is a backpack that can protect all of your different devices. It has a pocket in each one that can protect computers, key fobs, your cell phone, your tablets, everything else from any kind of prying, tracking, tracing, or even electrical disturbances. They also have a duffel bag that is literally just a huge Faraday bag. It's a super high-quality bag that can protect you against any kind of electrical event. Not only that, all of your stuff will be safe from hacking, prying, tracking, or tracing. Go to marfooglenews.com/offgrid and make sure to use the code Marfoogle. You'll get an extra discount. Also, a lot of people have emailed. They say, hey, how do I protect myself when I sleep from my phone and things like that? You would want to get an E-Deck bag or Off-Grid. Again, these bags come in different sizes, but these bags can essentially shield you from that. But just understand that once you put it in there, you're not getting calls, you're not getting anything. It completely cuts off any kind of bad frequency, bad stuff from it, but it also cuts it off from getting any kind of signals to it. So you're not going to get messages until you pull it out. You can get one with the window. You can still use your phone and things, but it will still be cut off from the rest of the world. So if you're worried about them hacking or prying, or even somebody using RF technology to get into your stuff, I would put it in here, Off Grid. And I don't know if this is, they anytime they have a chance, they try to bash Elon. And I don't know if that's all part of the circus that's going on right now to make us falsely think he's awesome or not, whatever it is. But now Meta, Twitter, Facebook's Threads hits 100 million users. Now, at first it was like 30 million or something, now 100 million. I don't think it's a ChatGPT, but it seems like it's picking up real fast. Is everybody on the left going to go over to Meta's Threads and everybody on the right is going to stay on Twitter? I doubt it. I don't know. Dex, what do you think?
Well, I think this article is, I think you're spot on. It's a great opportunity to poke at Twitter. And the media companies and the MSM don't like it anymore because it used to be their playground and they sort of got equalized over there. So they're going to jump jump ship and talk all sorts of great things about threads. And by the way, 100 million is just what Zuck said. No, there hasn't been any actual validation of that. The chart that's posted, and you'd have to click through to see it. I'm sorry we didn't load it. Didn't load in the article. But the chart that was posted from Cloudflare. Cloudflare is one of the many DNS companies out there that proxies a lot of traffic, and they show this dramatic shift in it. But that is only from their traffic. It doesn't necessarily represent all of the traffic. And it also, but it, certainly I don't want to discredit the fact that there isn't a change, but the big drop at the end is also coinciding with some rules that they put in place on Twitter to reduce the amount of bots that were able to actually scrape their network. So if all of a sudden they block all of that, then there would be a reduction in traffic. It doesn't mean there's a reduction in human traffic. It could be a reduction in bot traffic or these nefarious actors that we heard Elon transparently say, hey, we're trying to stop this. So we're putting in these different rules temporarily to see if we can slow down what they're doing because they're scraping all of our data. So anyway, it's interesting to see how this plays out. Will threads go left and Twitter go right, or will they continuously compete? I think a lot of people, even Dorsey kind of came out and made a joke about it. Like, why are they making yet another Twitter when we already have one? Shouldn't they be doing something else that's more important? I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember his quote. Of course, he's biased because Twitter was his original baby. He probably still, even though he's not involved, wants to see it somewhat survive and thrive.
This is so stupid. And by the way, it's Facebook. So as evil as Facebook is, nobody's on Facebook anymore, right? I mean, I shouldn't say nobody under 30 is on Facebook. Older folks are, because they can keep contact with their people. They can keep up with their high school friends. But the youth, they are not on it. I don't know a single one that is actually on Facebook anymore. And if you look at this, you'll see, yeah, there's a huge traffic kind of drop. But again, if they just got rid of all of the bots, then of course there would be less traffic. I just think it's crazy because now the people are going to basically go over to Threads and do the same thing. If they do end up, who is going to Threads? It's not really the people that are they. Even if they go for a couple days, it's kind of like every other usual boycott of something. They're probably going to just be back because they know Twitter. If Threads copies them exactly, then they're probably going to get their butts sued, which they are already sounding like they're going to. I don't know though. I think Zuckerberg is just not with it anymore. He's not able to make the stuff that he used to be. What do you guys think? Did you join Threads? Let me know in the chat below. And Dex, do you want to talk about Sarah Silverman sues Meta and OpenAI for copyright infringement?
This is a very interesting legal issue that has come about. So in this particular instance with Sarah Silverman, Richard Kadri and Christopher Golden, they're suing in federal court both Meta or Facebook and their AI functionality, and then of course OpenAI, which is the maker of ChatGPT. And what they're saying is, it is clear that they used our copyrighted content, in other words, their comedy, their spoken words, whatever, to as part of the learning. And they did that without our permission. They're saying that that's their copyrighted. They have a copyright to it, and they have a right to whether or not that is used or not. So, for example, if Sarah Silverman puts up a 1-hour comedy special on YouTube, she still owns the copyright to that. She's maybe allowing it to be played on YouTube, but it doesn't give permission for anyone else to use it. And I'm not saying that that's what happened, but what they're also saying is they can now query the systems and determine that their content has been used based on the information it's given back. So that's where this interesting conundrum comes up with the legal side, is where does copyright law take a position in the training of an AI system? Is it okay to use copyrighted material to teach a large language model like ChatGPT, or do you have to actually get their permission before you do it? So that's the question. We won't know the answer to it because it'll have to get through the legal system, but somebody's starting it, and these people are starting it by filing this lawsuit, and it'll be very interesting to see what comes of it. I think because this will certainly have a significant effect on these types of language models as they continue to evolve. They may have to start ripping out things that they've learned if they have to then retract copyrighted material.
I really wonder, like, how they train these things. Like when we first used ChatGPT to look up things, and we ended up having people say, "Hey, look at what it's saying." The first what was it? ChatGPT 3 or something said we looked up our own name, and it said all this crazy stuff, and basically ChatGPT just made things up. So say if you look up Mark Dice or something, it would say author this and that. Just kind of like how you look up, say, Mark Dice on Wikipedia. People edit that and alter it, and they have essentially made him look absolutely horrible on his wiki. They leave out all sorts of things like he's a best-selling author, this or that. They essentially edit it down. With AI, it was saying things about creators and different people that were essentially on the wrong side of the narrative. And it would just say, oh, well, you know, this article and this article said horrible things about that. And you go, okay, where did you get that article? Oh, I got it from a very specific place. It was published by the Washington Times, this and this and that. But that article didn't exist. And it was doing this kind of stuff. And I just wonder, as far as how they train these things, is it from a back end that we can't see as well as the front end stuff? Like if you were shadow banned from somewhere, would it end up seeing that in their training? If they were using the fire hose of Twitter, or if the company paid to use the back end of the tubes or Google, then would it catch the behind the scenes scary stuff on the side and the coding of how they, rate your channel or rate your content or rate that stuff? Because we know that there's a literal like P score that goes along with channels and things like this. I just wonder, on top of the stuff that they're actually grabbing on the front, how is everybody not able to sue for what these things are? If people are going to start using it as a search engine and they search something and it wrongfully puts out that you did all this stuff or just makes things up about you, everybody should be able to go to that and be like, hey, this is BS. Because somebody else is going to type it in and believe that crap. You know what I mean, Dex? I don't know if I explained that well enough, but I just wonder, when they first did this ChatGPT and all of these AI things, if they were using things on the back end that we couldn't actually see on top of all of the stuff that was public.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, there's certain things like, yeah, and we've talked about this before. And I don't know that ChatGPT did this, but we talked about the Twitter fire hose when we were talking about Elon and trying to stop everybody from scraping his content. And his excuse was AI was using, or people were using that to load AI and to learn language models for AI. That is something that we don't have access to, because we don't get to see every single tweet that's out there. It's not humanly possible. But there is this thing called the fire hose that gives you every tweet that's ever been written as it happens, and you can collect it and store it and do stuff with it. If you pay millions and millions of dollars to Twitter, or at least the Twitter that was there before Elon bought it. I'm assuming he still has that product because it makes millions and millions of dollars per customer. But the point is that that is an example of, yes, they could license something like that to train these models. And they certainly have lots of data. There's huge data companies that have lots of data that they could potentially use. But the real question is, are they actually licensing this stuff, or are they trying to do it for free and off the backs of other platforms, which those platforms have a right to that data because they're the ones that built it and modeled it, or the creator of the content, like Sarah Silverman, as an example, she's the copyright owner. It's her content. And do you have the right to actually use it in the language model? Very fascinating, in my opinion, legal question we'll probably hear more about in the coming, year.
Brett Butler says, everyone appreciates what you, Dex, and the mods and the Foogle fam at your back do for real news. We all love you. West Texas farmer here providing for you. Hey, thank you, Brett Butler. And thank you for your support. Thank you, everybody that watches the show, shares it out. Again, we would not get past all of those algorithms if it wasn't for you guys bringing people in. Almost everybody here has gotten here, or at least if they're not OG when we were recommended, it's from you guys sharing us out with a friend or family member. Like, hey, I watched this funky show. They talk about all sorts of weird stuff. It's you guys. So I cannot say thank you every single day enough to all of you that end up doing that. So from my family to yours, thank you so much. And I appreciate you. And thank you to the mods, especially for always helping folks with links and putting everything in there. Make sure to drop an M in the chat again for the mods. They did a great job during today. And again, just a reminder, please give us any kind of info you have or any theories you have on what's going on. Comment down below. If you're watching the replay, don't think, oh, somebody else is going to do it. Put your theories down there on what you think is going to happen in the next few years. Do you think that they are, planning for some sort of end times situation? Let me know. I'm going to do a full piece on this. So we've really got to put a lot of stuff together. So if you guys can help out on that, it'd be very much appreciated. And then in the future, I'd love to have some of the guests on that have looked into that a lot. So if you have suggestions for that too, put it down there. All right, Dex, let's go over the web only. We've got lots of really insane stuff down here.
Yeah, we certainly do. So head over to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or go below in the description, click on that show notes link. It's right there. It'll take you to this webpage with everything that we just talked about, all the links to the sources and content we were referring to. And then you'll find this orange bar or yellow bar. It says overflow. This is where the rest of the story is. Everything else we couldn't fit in the show or things that are a little too sensitive sometimes and gets people all riled up. But a couple of topics right off the bat. There's an allegation going on that somebody was trafficked to a Marine at Camp Pendleton. So if you want to learn more about that, pretty strong allegations, some pretty interesting theories around it. A couple of stories there you can read about. Another in that same vein, there's a big thing coming out from the BBC about somebody who also did something similar in that related topic. If you want to learn about that, it's there. It's covered. We have a little bit of the Elon and Zuck back and forth about, who's got a bigger brain, if you want to call it that, than the other. There's also some updates about beaches. And again, this topic we were talking about earlier, feces. But they're saying half of the U.S. beaches have contained unsafe levels of that from time to time. So if you want to know which beaches they're talking about, go take a look at that article. It's there. It shows you the map and everything on it. We definitely have some of the political coverage, on DeSantis, on even Pence and T-Man. It's all in there, what they're saying, what they think they could do, who's not doing so well, etc. You can find that. There's some updates around NK, and of course, some of the additional updates that go along with UKR. And if you haven't heard enough about crazy China theories in our Hollywood, you can go check out what they're saying is happening in the Barbie movie, where there's an alleged map that shows the South China Sea. And of course, I think we talked about this a week ago, but Vietnam has banned the movie because of the claims. And then, of course, a lot of people on one side of the political system here are now jumping on the bandwagon over the Barbie movie because they're saying that it's got some sort of China influence over this denotation of the ownership of the South China Sea in that movie, in a map that's drawn in the background in like kid format crayons. But yes, go check it out if you're interested. marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show or show notes link down below in the description. And I didn't even tell you everything that's going on. So if you think that's all that's there, it's not. Much more. Check it out.
And alien planet with metallic clouds resembles a giant mirror in space. And it actually has an actual photo. This is an actual photo of the planet. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah, and it just keeps floating away. So make sure to go read that article there. And sarcasm. All right. Have a good night, guys. Thank you so much, Nana of Montana. Thank you for being the top supporter tonight. Thank you over on DLive. Appreciate everybody that has shown support. I appreciate you. And of course, thank you, Stiletto Czar, Brett Butler, Sean James, Next Exit, Bible Talk 777. Of course, Tennessee Mountain Girl, Be Real Beast, Red Hevel. We've got Be Real. We have Ray the Way, AJ Sweating Ministry, 909, thank you. Danish Girl, thank you. Kenny Crowder, Zen1AZ, Music Lovers, T3, Miss Dragon, and Mitch Mouth. Thank you for, that was Celtic Warrior. Thank you for joining as a member today. I appreciate you. And thank you for all of the new members. So thank you so much. Have a great night. Be safe, be prepared, and Marf out. It's now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro.
I go to Adam and it digs that way. I say to Stephen and my moon knows the miracles happen when you know. Captain up on the rip girl, readiness, big text, Aliyah and the rip. I say the wolf now back with the Jan Paladin. See victorious and the fin. I said the Texas Chris and the Getty Adam on the standalone. I went back to Adam and the hey, I gotta go on smash on. I said everybody ready.